unilaterally end its nuclear weapons program.
Should end, okay. Okay, for the AF team, who was the first speaker?
Ben Wasson.
Okay. For the neg team?
Okay.
Logan Wilson.
Logan, got it. All right. I'm gonna be timing via app. I know we're not gonna be implementing the protected time rule thing, so just ignore it, but it's gonna give you one ding,
Okay.
1 minute into it, one ding when there's 1 minute left, and then there's 2 dings, which is the year mark, okay?
Okay.
Well, American probably. All right, so ready whenever you are.
Okay. We affirm the resolution Pakistan to unilaterally end its nuclear weapons program. Let's start off with some brief top of case. This is a policy resolution with the actor being Pakistan, and thus really we should have an emphasis on what is in the best interest for Pakistan. However, we also believe you should evaluate it through net benefits, like what is generally better. But again, an emphasis. So definitions we believe are contextual unless there are any questions about those, and the plan is the resolution through normal ways and means to repeat the resolution or the plan. Pakistan should unilaterally end its nuclear weapons program. Let's get into the first advantage of conflict with India. Right now, conflict with India is escalating and on the brink. One conflict, quote, erupted with a suicide bombing in February on India's side of Kashmir that killed 40 paramilitary officers. This terrorism is fueled by Pakistan and is a cause of dispute between the two countries, India and Pakistan, according to Reuters in 2019. 2. Pakistan is preparing for conflict, an even greater conflict. They, quote, sent all of their F-16 fighter jets to the Indian border. And India has also, quote, continued to maintain a high level of operational awareness, according to Express in 2019. 3. This itself isn't as important. The most crucial part is that this is causing Pakistan to resort to the nuclear option. A spokesperson from Pakistan, or even if they are not resorting to the nuclear option, like in terms of bombing directly, the spokesperson from the Pakistan government said that if India is to continue threatening the country, that Pakistan would, quote, dominate the escalation ladder. This is literally saying that Pakistan will engage in escalation or arms race with India if they are to continue responding and to continue developing their military forces. So the plan gets rid of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, which does 3 things. Yeah.
So they didn't specifically say that they would nuclearly retaliate, right?
Okay, so they're saying that they're going to increase they're going to dominate the escalation ladder, which implies that they're increasing their amount of nuclear weapons. And we'll explain why an arms race is bad later, like in itself. So to continue, the plan gets rid of Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, actually doing 4 things. Sorry, I forgot the last one. First of all, it sends a perception to India and to other countries that they don't want to escalate, which shows a sort of peaceful intent, which is crucial because of the conflict that's going on right now. Secondly, it gets rid of the possibility for nuclear war by taking away the nuclear weapons. Just having less nuclear weapons is also good by itself because it means that there's less chance for miscalculation and accidental conflict. Third, it stops the upcoming arms race by preventing escalation. There literally cannot be an arms race without 2 countries racing to get more arms. In this case, the armaments are nuclear weapons. And fourth, you cannot give these weapons to terrorists, which is a possibility given that they have harbored them in the past and that a lot of the conflict is due to Pakistan specifically operating with terrorists, or India thinks that Pakistan is operating with terrorists. Quote, if a single nuclear warhead falls into the wrong hands, there will be no Pakistan. Only denuclearization can save Pakistan from itself and the world from Pakistan, according to Foreign Policy magazine. The impacts are twofold. First of all is nuclear war directly, which is a huge impact. It is an extinction level impact. Even if there is not nuclear war, we can probably expect some sort of, nuclear war. Even if there's not nuclear war, we can expect arms race, and that's the second impact, preventing an arms race. A study by the University of British Columbia found that an arms race leads to war 82% of the time, and disputes without an arms race leads to war 4.2% of the time, which is a 20 times increase in probability of war when there is an arms race. And this is like the main impact of this argument, because we're directly eliminating the possibility of an arms race by not allowing Pakistan to get more arms. The second advantage is hegemony for Pakistan. Right now, we see that Pakistan's stance, and specifically Pakistan's threatening and operation of nuclear weapons, it sends a signal to these other countries, and that has led to these other countries freezing aid. According to Vox, the United States has frozen most of its military aid to Pakistan, $1.3 billion frozen. And next, Pakistan has responded by cutting off its cooperation, such as basing rights and intel sharing. And they've also stopped their anti-terror cooperation, which is incredibly important because that's like the main source of dispute between Pakistan, India, and the rest of the world. The foreign minister said that this is not how allies behave, meaning that these other countries, the way that they're treating Pakistan is causing conflict within the country. Next, the United States does not want Pakistan to have nukes, obviously, because of the conflict and because the United States is historically wants to have like a lot of power, right? And if Pakistan gets rid of these nukes, it will mean that they're less of a threat to other countries. So what does the plan do? One, denuclearization signals to the United States that Pakistan will cooperate and will not engage in military action. This stops the fear and hatred of Pakistan and allows other countries to trade and invest and to give aid. The internal link, like the chain of events that this sets off, first of all, the United States will reduce their sanctions, and will reduce the restrictions they currently have. Yeah.
So you're saying that it's good that the U.S. will give more military aid to Pakistan?
Yes, because Pakistan, we don't want them resorting to the nuclear option. Obviously, if Pakistan just does not have a military at all, that will be bad for the country. But it's not only military aid, it's also like other forms of aid and just sanctions in general. So the chain of events, the United States and these other countries will reduce sanctions and give more help to Pakistan, whether or not it's military aid, it's just beneficial, like aid in general on top of just military aid. Next, Pakistan will probably reinstitute all of this all of these like laws and cooperation with other countries, like intel sharing, basing rights, anti-terror cooperation, etc. And it also means that Pakistan is left with a military, which reduces the likelihood for conflict because we want to get rid of Pakistan's worst nuclear option, but we also want to make it so that Pakistan still has the option to defend themselves. Obviously, a defenseless Pakistan will probably provoke some sort of like strike from India given their hatred or something like that. However, if we keep Pakistan's defenses while removing their option to destroy the entire world, then we will probably do what's best for the country. So for the safety of Pakistan, for the safety of the rest of the world, and also for Pakistan's chances at improving international relations, we affirm. Thank you.
Okay. So the order will be a counterplan first, and then a disad, and then the acquiescing order. All right.
Sorry, can you say it again?
Yeah.
Oh, so a counterplan, and then a disad, and then the acquiescing order.
Okay.
All right. Everyone ready? Starting time now. So the framing seems fine. So let's go straight into the counterplan. The counterplan is that Pakistan will sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they will sign the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. I'll say it again. Pakistan will sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they will sign the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. Okay, so points of solvency under this. So the first solvency point is to be that these treaties make Pakistan a much more trustworthy actor. Specifically, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty allows for inspections on site in Pakistan and basically allows for international monitoring of Pakistani test sites. The second solvency point under here is going to be that the Test Ban Treaty makes it so that, so they make it so they have on-site inspections. And according to the American Federation of Scientists, the only reason Pakistan hasn't done this is because of a lack of domestic consensus. Pakistani officials have specifically said this is in Pakistan's best interest to sign this treaty. So basically, what we're going to see here is that this counterplan specifically makes it so that Pakistan becomes a more trustworthy actor and becomes less likely to strike out with nuclear weapons. All right, so this third thing under here is going to be a competition block for a perm. So basically, it's going to be first competitive on net benefits. They have to win the disad that we have to run in order to win the perm, because we're saying that this counterplan plus is going to be better than just than the plan. Secondly, it's going to be competitive because you can't have nuclear treaties and also have no nuclear weapons. It doesn't really make sense. Okay, moving into the disad. So the disad is going to be mutually assured destruction. the first uniqueness point here is that India is acting aggressive toward Pakistan. According to the BBC, India will completely isolate Pakistan if they have the chance to, and they are moving toward that right now. According to Al Jazeera, India has just cut off a key road in Kashmir, basically cutting off the Kashmiris' access to this main road and Pakistanis' access to this road. Basically, India is moving toward a more militaristic like stance in Kashmir, and so that is extremely key. The second uniqueness point here is according to the Chief Minister of the Indian state, Muslims have been lynched and attacked by Indian mobs in the status quo. The third uniqueness point here is that MAD works. According to Steven Pinker, who wrote Better Angels of Our Nature, the specific reason that we don't have a lot of conflict right now is because of mutually assured destruction. It is the political and just like straight up military check back between all of these powers that prevents conflict. So actually having nuclear weapons actually prevents conflict, it doesn't create more of it. So the fourth uniqueness point here is going to be that according to the American Federation of Scientists, India has 110 nukes and Pakistan has 70. So this is a specific refutation to all of their arms race quotes. All of the arms race already happened. It happened in the 90s. I don't know what they're talking about. This arms race already happened. Both of these states already have nuclear weapons, and they have a lot of them. So any arms race quotes are kind of weird because it's already happened. And then the fourth uniqueness point here is going to be that a lot of cross-border conflict has escalated right now in the status quo, like they talked about, because of Indian elections. The Prime Minister Modi has been trying to assert his political power by shelling across the Kashmiri border and by being aggressive and shooting down or claiming that he shot down planes. So basically, what we can see is that Indian aggression is from India, and they are trying to be aggressive on Pakistan. And so yeah. So all right. So the links. So the first link is that Pakistan pulls out its nuclear weapons, stops its nuclear weapons program. This leads to a disruption of MAD. So basically, when you get rid of mutually assured destruction, what happens is that India feels more emboldened. In India, this becomes worse because India is specifically trying to make Pakistan weak. They are specifically trying to make it so that Pakistan is less effective as a state. And so when they remove nuclear weapons, when they remove one of the big checkbacks on their military power, they're only going to get more aggressive and they're only going to increase the chance of a conflict. So basically this, so the second link here is that this increases the chance of nuclear war. Because basically, when you remove nuclear weapons, according to the Institute of Strategic Studies, this increases the chance of a nuclear war because India is going to feel more emboldened to strike back at Pakistan. And so basically there's two impacts here. The first impact is going to be conflict. Because of the recent conflict that I talked about in the SQO, there was about 55 people, mostly civilians, that were killed by Indian shelling like a week ago. And so we can see that India is going to be more emboldened and more likely to start shelling more to be more aggressive on the Kashmiri border and basically increase the amount of people that die in that border conflict. And then, so the second impact here is going to be an increase in nuclear war. When Pakistan takes away its nuclear weapons, India is going to have no way for it. India's not going to be checked back on. India is going to be more likely to use these nuclear weapons because they're not going to be retaliated on. All right, so on to the AF plan. Oh yeah, they say that like miscalc, they talk about miscalc, but miscalc is not a risk. Miscalc is going to be inherent in the status quo. And so and taking away these nuclear weapons is going to be a much bigger risk than miscalc. All right, so on to their first advantage. So on their first uniqueness point, they said that there's like 40 paramilitary like people who were killed in the status quo. Taking away these Pakistani nuclear weapons is only going to increase terrorism, not decrease it. Especially when Pakistan is harboring these terrorists, these people are going to feel scared. They're going to be, oh shoot, we don't have any nuclear weapons protecting us anymore. Now we need to enact more terrorist attacks to strike back against India because they forced us to do this.
Information.
Sure.
So why would these terrorists have a lack of confidence in Pakistan if, as you say, Pakistan, like currently MAD does apply to Pakistan?
Because we're saying that your plan would take away MAD, and then that would lead to more terrorism. That's what we're saying. Yeah. All right. So on the second uniqueness point, they say there's a higher level of operation between these two states. Yes, but taking away these nuclear weapons is going to only make it worse. Cross-flag from my first, the repetition of the first one. So at 30 to this point, they say that they're going to resort to the nuclear option, but look specifically to the fact that the card they read you says dominate escalation. That is the vaguest thing I have ever heard. Do not let them tell you that this is evidence for nuclear escalation. This doesn't make any sense, especially when MAD exists in the status quo, and both India and Pakistan have no interest in going into a nuclear war in the status quo because of MAD. So taking away MAD is only going to make this worse. All right, so on the link, so they say that this is going to sound like a peaceful message, but this is an ethnic conflict. India and Pakistan hate each other. India is not going to suddenly pull away from this conflict because Pakistan is saying it's a peaceful message. It doesn't really make any sense. And they say less chance for miscalc. I already refuted that. And then on the okay, yeah. So with the counterplan, we're going to have more peace on this overall. And then they said, so on the link about giving terrorists nuclear weapons, there are 100,000 soldiers guarding Pakistani nuclear weapons in the status quo, according to the American Federation of Sciences. This is not an actual link. Don't let them run this. And then on the impacts, I think I've gone over that. Our impacts that way. All right. So on the second impact, or the second advantage. So basically, they say that they're going to reduce conflict and fear and hatred and all that, but they don't explain to you why this is going to happen. When you take away MAD, terrorists are only going to be more incentivized to attack. Terrorists are only going to be more incentivized to make this worse. This is an ethnic conflict. Pakistan is not. This is not a conflict that is solved by peaceful signaling. This is a conflict that is solved by years and years of diplomacy. This is not the way to solve this problem. You're not going to solve this problem by taking away one of the only safeguards that Pakistan has against India. Thank you.
So, sorry if you can't see me clearly because of the artwork, but the order is going to be the counterplan, the disad, and then case. Clear?
Yeah.
You should be voting aft because the perm solves the best and the perm works perfectly. Okay, so let's break this down. What is our advocacy? Okay. Our advocacy is that Pakistan should unilaterally end its nuclear weapons program, right? The actor is Pakistan ending its nuclear weapons program. Their counterplan is that Pakistan will sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and that they will sign the test ban treaty. They say in their fourth solvency point is that it competes on net benefits because of the disad, which I'm going to address in a moment. But other than that, they say that it's functionally competitive because you can't both have regulations, you can't both sign treaties on nuclear weapons as well as not have nuclear weapons at the same time. But that is not true. The best way to solve these issues is with the counterplan in the plan. Think of the counterplan text, for example. You can say that Pakistan should unilaterally end its nuclear weapons program and sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty and sign the Non-Test Treaty. There's no reason that you can't both not have nuclear weapons, not use nuclear weapons, as well as engage in these treaties that would solve for any, although it wouldn't probably make, although it functionally, both of them solve the same thing, there's no reason you can't have both. There's nothing preventing both from happening. I can't emphasize this enough. They don't do enough work on why, the perm can't functionally happen. Perm solves best, do both, and that's pretty much all we need on the counterplan. I might come back to it later, though. I'm going to explain, reference back to it throughout. Okay, they're disad. So basically they're saying that when, the problem is that you lose mutually assured destruction when you are removing nuclear weapons. So I have many responses to this. They quote Pinker and they say that MAD solves and that MAD does good and that it prevents conflict. However, in the status quo we have MAD and that there is conflict right now and that conflict is escalating in the status quo with currently mutually assured destruction. According to Pinker, would be preventing this from happening. But if conflict is increasing the status quo, it's clearly not solving. The only way to reach peace, the only way to try to reach peace is to go with the plan, to vote with the affirmation, to remove to disengage the nuclear weapons program. No reason that it's not, and it's totally topical, it's within the realm of the AF to also sign any non-proliferation treaties as well. So it also solves any sort of advantages that you have with the counterplan, right? So clearly the MAD isn't working right now. So then, and also furthermore, I'm going to say this later on, but I'm going to say it here as well. Actually, I'm going to say it in a second, sorry. So they say that you prevent the arms race from happening because, they said that the arms race already happened because India has 110 nukes and that Pakistan has 70 nukes. So the arms race already happened, so it's not going to happen again. But we give you, we warrant that escalation will continue to happen in the future, and it's just obvious that escalation will continue. We say that, not it's time, that escalation equals arms race. What happens when you have tensions, when you have conflict, when you have people who are in conflict with each other, is that you have these people want to then beat the other person, right? So that means that they're going to want to increase their nuclear arms. And they themselves, according to their counterplan, apparently the non-proliferation treaty, as well as the anti-nuclear, all the treaties that they're talking about, if they're not in place right now, then there's nothing preventing Pakistan and India from building more nuclear weapons. So the best way to solve for this is, one, to denuclearize, so that completely eliminates any need for any sort of escalation or arms race, and two, to then institute any sort of the treaty, so then that means that there will not be any sort of arms, so then there will not be any sort of arms race, no sort of nuclear testing. It solves all of the issues. Okay, yeah, the perm solves best. So now on the link level. So when they say that MAD is disrupted and that India is emboldened, I have 4 responses to this. First of all, according to the New York Times, according to George Fernandez, who is the Indian, or that's not as true. I don't remember. The New York Times said that in 2002 that the Indian defense minister said that India has no plans to launch military attack on Pakistan, even if severely provoked. So what we see is that in the past that they've shown that like an actual military conflict is probably not going to be happening, even like if it is significantly in this isolated scenario where they say that MAD is disrupted, that there will be conflict, that's probably not going to be happening. Actually, kick that. So, sorry, moving on. So then, next they say so India does not want war, right? They want to avoid war. So it doesn't make sense if Pakistan were to remove its nuclear capability, then India would not want to go to war with them because war is uniquely bad, because war means people die. People don't like war. War is something that people want to avoid, right? They say it's an ethnic conflict, but then the most significant point here that is going to be preventing India from wanting to overstep Pakistan is that we tell you that in our link scenario, in our advantage, which one? It doesn't matter, is that the United States will then increase its military support. Again, they asked this in a POI just for clarification. So we definitely said that the United States will increase its military support. Well, so Trump withdrew military support just a year ago or something, just a little while ago, from Pakistan. We told you $1 billion in military aid and different types of aid. So our link scenario is that aid will be reinstated, that we will have the military support from the United States in Pakistan. So that means that India will not want to attack Pakistan because then they would have issues with the United States as well as with the UN and the rest of the world, deterring any sort of conflict from India. Conflict is something that they do not want, yeah.
So is it true that Pakistan still harbors terrorists, so there's no reason that the U.S. would reinstitute military aid?
Although it is true that Pakistan, that's something that you'd have to warrant, but this is the thing about sanctions. There are a lot of problems with a lot of countries. Our country, for example, has a lot of problems. But if Pakistan is to do something that we like removing the nuclear weapons, then you can have partial adding on, reduction in sanctions for compliance. That's the way sanctions work. So it's okay to be working with Pakistan, although it is true that although there might be some issues with Pakistan, if we are ensuring world peace, if we are able to reach the impacts that we were talking about, then it's worth it. So, right, so then moving on here to our case. Oh, right. So the disad doesn't go through, so that means that also it's not better on net benefits by the firm. So now on the advantages. Okay. So pretty much everything is on the first advantage. We tell you that, actually I'm going to go with the second advantage first because it's probably stronger anyway. So with hegemony, we tell you that Pakistan will get hegemony. Again, this is the entire scenario that they really did not address line by line at all. They ran out of time. It's really important here. So it's basically conceded for within the realms of this debate, and because it's true. The U.S. freezed aid to Pakistan, $1.3 billion. So that meant that they cut off basing rights, intelligence sharing, and also anti-terrorism work and stuff like this. So then we tell you that U.S. wants less nukes. So when Pakistan complies with this, that sanctions will go down and that military will be probably partially reinstated. This means that we have increased cooperation. This will help Pakistan with economics, that this will decrease U.S. sanctions of all type of aid, and that means that we reinstate intelligence sharing and all these important things for the United States and for Pakistan, which is uniquely good because it's best for the United States and Pakistan to be, for the United States to be the world hegemon. That's going to be a key voter issue for us. So, on the first advantage, they say like the conflict in India, they say, so we tell you that escalation equals an arms race. They say that there's an ethnic conflict, but any step towards peace is necessary. They drop our specific articulation on the link level on our second link and our third link about how decreasing nuclear war means that you're going to decrease decreasing nukes means less nuclear war, and that if you eliminate arms and you can't have an arms race, that specific articulation goes conceded, and that's going to be a major offensive point on our first point, but we're also going for our second one. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll be going over the aft and the neg in order, and then I'll be doing a little overview as to what this debate's going to be about on the top of the aft. Okay. Everyone ready? Okay, so start time now. There are going to be three main issues that this debate is going to come down to. First of all is the difference between nuclear and traditional weapons. This is pretty critical, and they're kind of blurring the lines on purpose to gain ground. The second one is that mutually assured destruction has helped global conflicts across history. And the third one is that the treaty is better alone, the perm does not hold. I'll get onto that later. So their first advantage is about the conflict with India. And they basically say that decreasing arms means less war. And there's no warrant for this. Mutually assured destruction checks back on war. They say that miscalc will decrease, but they give no evidence for this. Miscalc has never happened before. There was one time when there was an accident where someone thought that the other nation was attacking, and then they didn't attack back because they knew it was a mistake. In other words, mutually assured destruction always will solve for miscalc because it will never happen. We have computers. It's not like we're going to accidentally press the button. You can't just speculate wildly that miscalc will happen, especially when the one time it did, mutually assured destruction solved in the end. So, and when they say that there's less of an arms race, what does this mean? I do not see any impact from having more nuclear weapons. It's about whether we use them or not. When we tell you that when the balance shifts, India will be more aggressive and actually impact the lives in Pakistan, that's what matters. It's not about the arms race. We are weighing this debate on net benefits. They need to tell you how this impacts individual lives. Otherwise, it's not relevant. So, on their impacts, all of these are incorrect. Their first impact is that it sends the perception of peace. Signing a treaty does this even more than rationally ending your nuclear program and increasing conflict in the region. In other words, the CP solves better for this impact on its own. The second one is that less nukes means a less increased chance of miscalc. Again, miscalc does not happen. They give you no warrants for why it happens. And the one time it did happen, mutually assured destruction, which we increased uniquely, helped to fix it. The third impact is that it stops the arms race. There's no impact to an arms race, as we have said. The fourth one is that they cannot give to terrorists. The CP uniquely does this because that's what is in the treaty. So we solve better on their own advantage. Okay, their second advantage, which is about Pakistan's hegemony. Again, we solve better on a deficit because Pakistan will gain more hegemony from doing the treaty than they will from ending the nuclear program. When we talk about how terrorists are more incentivized to attack, they ask why. The answer is when you have a stronger state with a stronger military and more nuclear weapons, terrorism is less likely to happen. Terrorists take advantage of a weak state. When they talk about how the U.S. will give more aid back to Pakistan, that does not make sense. They are basically saying that traditional military is better than nuclear military. But this is not true. We see that traditional military supplies actually get used on people. Nuclear weapons do not. They are simply a strategic pawn. When they say that normal military aid is better than nuclear military aid, they critically miss the point. Nuclear military aid assures a balance of power, while normal military aid actually kills people. They have not responded to this. So, basically, when they talk about how they signal that we will cooperate, which leads to more trade and investment, first of all, military aid is worse. Second of all, the CP does this even more. When Pakistan shows that it is willing to be responsible and accept this treaty that most of the world does, we see the impacts of this case. On the impacts, they just say that there's a stronger military, but gaining stronger conventional weapons is worse than gaining nuclear weapons, because nuclear weapons are not used, they are only a strategic pawn. This is pretty important in today's debate round. If you make Pakistan's military stronger, but not in a nuclear sense, the conflict will escalate because India will feel emboldened to be aggressive. So, on to the counterplan. They say that the perm solves the best, and they say that because the disad doesn't link. First of all, the disad clearly links. They have not done enough work on it to throw it out at this point. I'll get to that more. And then second of all, they say that technically we could have no nuclear weapons and also agree that people get to inspect our nuclear weapons. This is not what a perm is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be some word that you just throw out to try to win. A perm is saying that our negation counterplan does not function as a counterplan. Our counterplan is a reason to vote for us because it is something that cannot exist in their world. We are saying that Pakistan should have a responsible nuclear arsenal instead of no nuclear arsenal. Those clearly cannot exist in the same world. The perm does not hold. You can't just say perm and say technically it works. You have to be making the actual opportunity cost argument. So when our plan cannot exist with their plan, it means you do not vote for the perm because they create an irresponsible nuclear program and we create a responsible one. So on to the disadvantage of mutually assured destruction. Basically, they say on our response to the fact that MAD works, or mutually assured destruction works, which is the most important uniqueness point. They say in this world we already have wars. The number we read you was 55 families. That sounds like a lot, but it's nothing compared to history. World War II was the largest conflict in the history of the planet because of technological advances. What changed after that? Why did Russia and the US never ever go to war directly with each other again? It's mutually assured destruction. This is what we're talking about. We're not saying that mutually assured destruction ends war. What we're saying is that it creates a complex power balance that means that no one nation can flat out attack the other one. What they do when you decrease nuclear arms in Pakistan is you could allow India to attack Pakistan because you disrupt that balance. This still stands. Don't let them say that issues already exist, so that means that it doesn't work. No, we have seen mutually assured destruction in the long term lead to less war and less death. So they say that they need a warrant that Pakistan will escalate. Again, the important part is not the arms race. They give you no impact to an arms race. They give you no impact. They don't even say how much it will increase the chance that nuclear war happens. What we do see is that when you create an imbalanced power dynamic, again, according to the Institution of Strategical Studies, this creates more war from a strategical perspective because India feels emboldened to attack Pakistan. That is the important impact. Not more nukes at all. It's about creating an imbalanced power structure. So, when they say that, according to the New York Times, India has no plans to attack, look to our first uniqueness point. Modi is becoming uniquely aggressive in the status quo. He is trying to entirely isolate Pakistan, which will make it a more aggressive nation, and there are already mob violence against Muslims, which are the major ethnic group in Pakistan. So, this is not true. The disad still holds. When you stop nuclear weapons, what you do is create an imbalanced power dynamic that gives India, which is the aggressive nation right now, make no mistake, power to do this. So, fundamentally, also when they talk about how the US will increase military support, again, the differences between nuclear military support and traditional military support. Traditional military support means more civilian deaths on the border. Nuclear military support means a better balance of power, which means less deaths in the long term. Fundamentally, what the affirmative is doing is they are creating an imbalanced power dynamic. And I know I've said this a lot, but it's very important. The countries are balanced because of their nuclear weapons. When you take that away, India will feel very emboldened to act more aggressively as they already are. This means guaranteed loss of lives on the people. Also, they'll feel more emboldened to use nuclear weapons, perhaps, because there's less of a chance of a backlash. What this means is that less nuclear weapons on Pakistan's side means more war. Don't let them say that less weapons equals less war. Thank you. Vote nay.
Alright, so it'll be 2 voters, and then I'll get to the case if I have time, but probably not. And I'll tell you where I am on the case. Okay, everyone ready? Starting time now. Okay, so the first voter in this round is going to be that the CP solves for the advantages. So let's go over why it solves for each of the advantages. For the first advantage, basically on like conflict with India. First, MAD checks back. This is extremely important. When they get rid of MAD, the power dynamic goes completely away, and it basically makes the situation worse. This emboldens India to attack more, especially not only nuclear weapons, but also just conventional weapons shelling across the border. This is extremely important. When we're not only talking about the low probability impact of nuclear war, we're talking about the really probable, already happening impact of India killing 55 families last week. That happened. And India is only going to feel more emboldened and more willing to whip up its nationalist base because of Pakistan taking away its nuclear weapons. That is why the CP solves better, because a responsible nuclear arsenal is better than none. And then also, MAD checks back on miscalc. Miscalc is not a voter issue here. It doesn't make sense. Like my partner said, miscalc has never happened. When miscalc potentially did happen, MAD checks back. The Russian guy in the submarine who said that who got like a faulty signal said, "Oh no, that would never happen. I'm not going to press the button. I'm going to check again." MAD checks back on miscalc. Then, thirdly, basically, the CP is a better signal for like solving conflict with India than just getting rid of the nuclear program. Because if Pakistan takes away its nuclear weapons, all India is going to see is a weak state. When Pakistan institutes these treaties and starts trying to regulate itself, India is going to see a state that is more willing to cooperate with it. It is a very different signal. All right, so on the second advantage. So the CP also solves for this because the treaty solves better again. The Pakistan is going to be sending a more peaceful signal by making a more diplomatic move that makes more sense for its own self-interest instead of just seeming like a weak state. Additionally, terrorists are going to take advantage of Pakistan without nuclear weapons. They're going to feel more threatened by India. They're going to be more likely to kill more of the attacks like the 40 paramilitary troops. All of these things are more likely to happen in their world than ours. Okay, so the second voter is going to be that MAD is better than the alternative. I know I've said this a lot, but it is super, super important. So let's talk about the 2 main impacts that we have in this round. So the first one is going to be border conflict. Border conflict is really high probability because it's already happening, and it is a pretty like medium magnitude. Border conflict in Kashmir is extremely important, and is going to be like the most probable impact of this round. And then again, nuclear weapons are going to be a less probable impact, but way higher magnitude. When we have a better magnitude impact than they have, because we have better access to the fact that if you get rid of MAD, there's going to be a bigger chance of nuclear weapons, because we tell you, I think it makes sense, that if you get rid of the power dynamic and you get rid of that balance, India is going to feel more emboldened to attack. It's like, for example, the US was able to attack Japan with its nuclear weapons because it didn't have to fear retaliation. That's extremely important. And so, MAD is a really key check back. And then, right, so yeah, again, so yeah, and then some other things. First, arms race has no impact. Do not let them collapse to arms race. Arms race, they haven't explained what the impact is, and the arms race already happened, like I said, in the 90s, so they shouldn't even be collapsing on it at all. Arms race makes no sense. Yeah, so basically, you're going to be voting neg because MAD is better than the world that the app proposes. Getting rid of MAD will lead to more conflict and a higher chance of nuclear war. Vote neg. Thank you.
So order is going to be an overview of the round, and then I'm going to go on to counterplan, DA, AF case, and then way. Sorry. everyone ready? Overview. You should be voting for the affirmative because with either world there is no risk of war. The only non-war impact is the hegemony argument, so any risk of that is a reason to vote for the affirmative. Let's start on the counterplan. Extend the refutations to the counterplan. The perm does work. First of all, on net benefits, if the DA does not link, there is no net benefit, and thus if we prove the DA doesn't link, then this counterplan is not exclusive on net benefits. Next, they say the perm does not work functionally because Pakistan cannot sign a treaty and have nukes. Sorry, as Nolan said, this isn't true. Like, you can still not have nuclear weapons and then have treaties that say that you should like responsibly use nuclear weapons or responsibly treat nuclear weapons, right? In fact, some treaties even say like you should not have nuclear weapons. So there's no reason why you cannot sign a treaty and also not have nuclear weapons. Let's move on to the DA. So I'm going to do a quick brief overview. You probably don't need to flow on the DA. All of the refutations about mutually assured destruction eventually apply to the DA specifically because of a response we made about U.S. military support, and they also apply to the first advantage. So, like, before I get to the DA, I guess, I'm going to be kicking the first advantage. It's all defense. There's no impact on the first advantage. Going on to the DA, there are a couple key important things. They say mutually assured destruction works, and Nolan responded by saying that there is still conflict with mutually assured destruction. Extend that argument. That is factually true. There is still conflict with mutually assured destruction. They say that doesn't matter. In the neg block, they say that doesn't matter because the US and Russia have mutually assured destruction, and no conflict has happened since the Cold War. They're forgetting the proxy wars with Syria that have killed hundreds of thousands to millions of people. There are still clearly conflicts that have evolved even when mutually assured destruction exists. So mutually assured destruction does not solve. However, if mutually assured destruction does solve, it also solves for the disadvantage. I'll explain why we've proven that in a little bit. Let's move on later on the disadvantage. On the links, we have one response. According to the New York Times, India has no plans to launch weapons if provoked, and they say that Modi is becoming more aggressive. However, they're forgetting what we tell you at the beginning of our first advantage, that this is a response to actions from Pakistan, that India is specifically becoming more militarily aggressive because, and I have like the quote here, that it, quote, erupted with a suicide bombing on India's side of Kashmir that killed 40 paramilitary officers. The conflict is because of Pakistan. India is responding. Therefore, when there is no threat from Pakistan, India will not engage. Also, just extend this quote, like they don't directly refute the quote. They just say, okay, Modi, but the quote still says that India, it's from a person in India's government saying that India has no plans to launch weapons, even if provoked. Next, Nolan gave you the second response that is very important here, that the U.S. will increase military aid to Pakistan, and if that is true, then the U.S. will still keep this mutually assured destruction for Pakistan, extend this. There is no imbalance, as they say, because Pakistan can still rely on the United States and other allies. India would not want to fight these other countries. Nolan says, quote, U.S. military support will deter India. They concede that. So clearly, there is no risk of war in any world. There is no risk of war because, first of all, mutually assured destruction. And if mutually assured destruction does not work, then you should be voting on the first advantage because that's really their only response, mutually assured destruction. So in a world where mutually assured destruction works, it solves the DA. In a world where it doesn't, the first advantage is true and you're voting on that. But let's assume the world where their argument is true and mutually assured destruction does deter. Then you should be clearly going to the second advantage. The second advantage says that other countries will give more aid. Specifically, we say that the United States will give military aid so Pakistan is not defenseless. Again, they say that this will not happen. The United States specifically froze military aid, $1.3 billion of it, because of Pakistan's threats. That's what we say in the argument. Thus, if there are no threats from Pakistan, then this aid will still go through. Then the United States will continue to give this, it won't continue to, it will reestablish this aid. Thus, there is defense for Pakistan and India won't strike. But also, there are other ways that hegemony is good. Extend all of the other scenarios that we say here about basing rights. Sorry, I don't have it here. We tell you, I don't know where this is. We tell you basing rights, we tell you intel sharing, we tell you anti-terrorist cooperation, etc. All of these are clear benefits. So let's wet. In terms of, you should be evaluating probability over magnitude because we shouldn't evaluate impacts that have no chance of happening. In terms of probability, no war scenarios will happen in this debate. The only thing you should be looking to is the guaranteed increase in hegemony for Pakistan, which means that the U.S. will supply military aid, and also that there will be all of these other benefits like basing rights, intel sharing, etc. So that's why you should be voting for our side. Thank you.